And hello! Today for our cooking demonstration, we will be doing a classic twist on a beef stroganoff dish. Substitute in chicken breast, which will decrease our cooking time and make it a little bit healthier for us. Our mise en place for today will be a saute pan, a saucepan to cook our egg noodles, our cutting board, knife. We already have some pre-diced onions, mushrooms that we'll be slicing, chicken breast to slice, our beef stock, sour cream, butter. We always have a pre-made mix of salt and pepper, a little bit of garlic, some oil, flour, our Dijon mustard, and our egg noodles, which I've already got pre-measured out in some of our dry ingredient measuring cups. Those are a little different and come in a set, generally of 4, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, and 1 cup. And then our measuring spoons will have 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon. And our liquid measuring cups, and we'll cover this in detail in another lesson, the difference between them all. The first thing we want to take care of is get a pot of water on the stove and up to a boil. Once it achieves a boil, we're going to put in our egg noodles. Make sure we stir often. At this point, you're going to let them, it really has a tendency to boil over, so you're going to want to reduce your heat down and just cook them. The beautiful thing about egg noodles is they only take about 5 minutes to cook. So what I generally do with them is drop them in my hot water, give them a stir, let them cook for about 2 minutes, cut off the heat, and then about 3 minutes later, I'll take those and drain those off, and they'll be ready to use. Next thing we're going to go to is making sure we get our vegetables cut first to prevent harmful cross-contamination. Remember when cutting what we learned? Keep our fingers out of the way, and we're just going to slice our mushrooms. Good thing about the glove, you notice I just cut my glove, but not myself. So you got a nice slice on your mushrooms. And there's no need to pretend that you're a samurai and chop these lightning fast. It's best if you still have all of these and we don't add any red food coloring to our recipe. It'll turn the stroganoff pink, and that's just not a good color. At least not for stroganoff, when you're dealing with chicken, that is. I'm going to put my mushrooms on a plate to hold them there for a minute. Next, I'm going to move over to my chicken. I'm going to get that processed. Real easy. With your chicken breast, and this is a tricky part, so be real careful. Your hand flat on the thickest part, my thumb up above my hand curved, and that knife goes in halfway, and see the handle is going to hold me right there. And nothing ever got down below that knife to cut myself. And what I've done is now taken that chicken breast and I've split that. And this lets you see the way the muscle runs. And so now you want to take it, and if you think you've got a heart, slice right across that muscle, because the muscle grains go this way. And if you slice this way, it'll be tough and stringy. But if you cut across those muscles, you're going to have a really tender piece of chicken. The same principle works with beef especially well, because beef has a tendency just to be a lot tougher than chicken. And it's the appliance of the structure of a muscle cell and the way that they bind together. And by breaking that structure, by cutting across the grain, the structure runs this way and this way. And by cutting against that structure, we're going to ensure that we're going to have a nice tender piece of chicken. And by cutting thin, it'll cook nice and quick. And what we've done is eliminate the unevenness out of that chicken breast, where you had a thin side that was going to get cooked real quick and a fat side that might not get cooked all the way through. So we've now made it manageable and speed our process up. Once I've got all this done, my next step is going to heat up this saute pan and get it ready for business. All right, so now I've got my saute pan hot, and I'm going to add some oil to it. We're going to use oil because it's got a lower scorch temperature. In other words, it won't burn as fast as raw butter will while we're sauteing. And we're going to start with our chicken so we get a good sear on it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take it and be real careful not to splatter any of this hot oil out, and add our chicken carefully into the pan. And it's quite all right to use a little spoon, spread our stuff out so we get a nice good cook. We're going to take a little bit by what the recipe will call for. Said me in this particular case calls for a little less than a teaspoon, so I'm going to go that route. My garlic. I'm going to take a little pinch of my salt and pepper because I'm a believer in seasoning as we cook. Now at this point, I've got seasoning on it. I'm starting to get some cooking done on the bottom of my chicken, so I'm going to give it a little stir. And the whole idea is to really start with the hottest pan you can, because the idea is you're going to sear your protein, your meat, and that'll lock in your juices and a lot of that flavor. Boy, I sure hope your kitchen is smelling as good as ours right now. But that's the key to cooking, in my opinion, is garlic, and then onions is the time. We've got our chicken cooked about now, so we'll add our onions in. Give them a little stir there in the middle. Got our onions in, cooking. Now at this point, I'm going to get my mushrooms ready to go. And then I'm going to get my butter that I need. And the cool thing about butter is they're pre-marked for you. Teaspoons, tablespoons, and how much you need to make that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off what I need for my recipe. And I'm going to add my butter and my mushrooms to my pan at the same time. And by ensuring that I've got vegetables and chicken that are cooking in there, it's going to prevent my heat on that pan from getting too hot now to scorch the butter that I've added. But it's going to allow it to melt for me so that I can make a roux in the pan, which is actually a combination of oil, butter, and flour that holds it together and then helps thicken the sauce. And we're going to get it. It's amazing how this stuff works. We'll cover that in, I think, the 5th lesson. And that's the whole joy about cooking, is that you got a lot of flexibility in what you're doing for yourself. Whereas in baking, you're really more rigid, like chemistry. Now that you've got it to this point, and your butter, as you can see, is melted all up, I'm going to move my stuff off to the side a little bit. And add my flour for the recipe right into the pan, and then get it right into that oil and give it a good stir in there because I want to get those lumps out of it. At this point, you're going to want to lower your temperature down to about medium. And once you've got your flour mixed really good so you don't see lumps and it doesn't look pasty like that, we're going to add our beef stock to this. And this is going to help thicken this up. And then right towards the end, we'll finish it with some sour cream. And then add our egg noodles and let it heat through. And once you got your stock in there, you're going to want to go ahead and mix this and raise our temperature back up just a little bit. Not all the way to high, but almost. And what you're going to see is as this comes up to a simmer and that water gets close to boiling, the stock in there, is that this liquid is going to start thickening up a little bit. And while that's doing that, I'm going to reach over and grab my sour cream that I need and have that ready. That's going to give me the sour cream I'll need. As you see the convection start happening, that's the movement of the liquid from the heat. You're going to get some thickening going on in here. There we go. Generally, by the time this comes up to a good boil like that, it's going to thicken up for you a little bit to a nice little sauce. We're going to add our egg noodles back to the pan carefully. You don't want it to splash out. This is hot. So we want to enjoy what we prepare. We don't want to be in pain while we're eating it. And now you're going to mix these egg noodles right back in. It's going to heat them right back up for you. And then the last step that we're going to do for this is we're going to take our sour cream and we're going to add it to our pan nice and carefully. Slowly stir that in, and we're going to take our temperature and lower it right on down because we're basically done to a nice little simmer. You don't want to boil your sour cream because it'll curdle. So anytime you're using milk or cream or sour cream in a recipe, you want to make sure that that's the last thing you add, with few exceptions, of course, when we're talking about like a mother sauce, a cream sauce, because that's what's going to break and curdle, and it gives it a real grainy texture when that happens. And voila, the last thing you're going to want to do is taste this and then adjust salt and pepper as you need it. All right, and this tasted fantastic, kind of like beef stroganoff but with chicken. And now we're just going to take and you know what we always say in the kitchen when you get to this point? We say lunch is served. And I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation of chicken stroganoff.